The three key pillars of SWA are to prioritise WASH at the highest political level, to promote a strong evidence base and strengthen country processes. The partners come from all different aspects of the sector, so developing country governments, the donors, research institutions, civil society, of course, and also lots of multilateral agencies such as WSSCC, UNICEF, the World Bank, etc. So the idea is to address that fragmentation in the sector and work out how we can work together to increase impact and increase the targeting of resources to the sector. Political leaders in East Africa also committed in many different ways, which we've seen, to address the bottlenecks in the sector and improve prioritisation. And now it's about following up and holding them to account. Big plans for 2013 that really came out of the partnership meeting. What are we going to be focusing on this year and into the 2014? Continue to focus on really achieving a high profile in WASH, and that includes really using the commitments from the high-level meeting that were made to continue to put pressure on political leaders and really influence all the different spaces we've been talking about this week to keep the pressure up on WASH. And in addition to that, we have some other opportunities. We've talked about the post-2015 development agenda and how can we work as a partnership to really influence that agenda. And also we know that the Deputy Secretary General, Jan Eliasson, who moderated the high-level meeting last year, has just launched his own call to action on sanitation. So really to put pressure on how we're going to go some way to achieving the MDG on sanitation. Strengthening mutual accountability. It's not just about holding our countries to account, but also donors to account. Of the 353 specific commitments that were tabled from all the countries, that they can be categorised around the three main pillars of SWA, that being political prioritisation, evidence-based decision-making, and national planning processes. Some interesting cases that we can already look at country level about what follow-up looks like. And a really good example is the recent presidential summit on financing water and sanitation, which was a presidential initiative that took place in February and brought all the stakeholders together in Nigeria to really look at, how far we've come and look at how the sector can be financed in Nigeria. And this was something that was promised it wasn't actually a commitment, but it was promised in the high-level meeting that this would take place. In Tanzania, I understand that the President has launched a countrywide sanitation campaign that really responds to Tanzania's commitment to develop pro-poor strategies in WASH. Similarly, in Ethiopia, I understand that all the ministers have come together to put together a unified WASH framework, and one national programme is being developed at the moment. It's under preparation, and again, that's in response to a commitment that was tabled at the high-level meeting. Many partners really felt there was a little bit of a lull after the 2010 high-level meeting. We didn't hear a lot of communication. People weren't sure what was happening next, what they were supposed to be doing, and then there was a flurry of activity before the 2012 high-level meeting, and we've heard from Catherine and others how the commitments were rushed along at the last maybe 10 days before. In the next few months, we'll be producing a progress report on the 2012 high-level meeting commitments, and partners in country have been asked to sit together, all stakeholders, all partners, so it'd be interesting to hear from you how involved you've been in this process, to look at the commitments and come back and report to the Secretariat on every single commitment from every country and all the donors to report on progress for those commitments. And analysis will take place in May, and we plan to launch the progress report in June of this year. So that hopefully will be a really good advocacy tool for all our partners, including you all, to use to put pressure, to raise awareness of those issues, again, of the commitments, analyse, how far we've come, where we're lagging behind, what needs to happen, and hopefully to promote that dialogue across the sector in your countries. The reporting should be led by country governments, as in everything in SWA. The country governments are really in the driving seat. The development partners and civil society support the process. This is just to give you a snapshot so you can visualise what that reporting framework looks like. I understand you can't see all the detail, but each country has been sent an Excel spreadsheet, and down the left-hand side there'll be a list of all the commitments that country made. I'd like to hear a little bit about what activities you think you could get involved in, how you could engage in this process, but also the challenges. And then feedback to me any suggestions about what you would like to see in some of these guidelines.
We had just decided on two things. One was to, first of all, identify where the commitments are at the moment, at the country levels, trying to identify which ministry made the commitments, which other actors should be involved. And the other issue we talked about was trying to take the commitments to the local level to make sure that they are understood by at the lowest level at the district and local governments.
One quick point that was mentioned here was civil society's role maybe in trying to ensure that SWA is not a parallel system or parallel process with new commitments which are outside of other processes and national WASH meetings that are currently happening, and help to bring those back so that they are embedded within national coordination meetings and discussions that are already existing platforms, because there's a feeling that in some countries there's country SWA teams being built up, and it's kind of just adding an extra structure. So CSOs can help in bringing that back and harmonizing that.
One is practically and more engagement with the media, even if it's identifying six people who are media people that we can work with to unpack the messages and disseminate. And the second one is work with the Parliamentary Forum on WASH to bring these issues to that level.
Thank you.
I think for us, we wanted to focus on disseminating and popularizing the commitments, and then ensure that this is integrated and coordinating within the national structures, and then we'll launch, because we don't want it to be very expensive, and then we'll launch it with the media at the various platforms within the sector, like the Media WASH forums, the parliamentary forums, as well as the CSO Forum.
The first thing I want to do is to emphasize that the purpose of WASH, as you'll see when I show you, is to be something that is owned by everybody, and that is not, so it doesn't look like a WaterAid product, and it won't work if everybody expects WaterAid to do everything. So WashWatch is an online tool which is intended to use this concept of crowd collaboration. Which sounds very technical. What does it mean? It means whoever is interested, whoever is incentivized, and whoever wants to be involved in assessing and holding people accountable, they are able to. So the expectation is that we have civil society, that we have academics, that we have INGOs, government ministries even can participate, critique or correct analysis that is presented, and interested individuals, people who are taking an interest to know about the sector, the experts that we have in the room here. What I'm going to do now is just take you through some other examples of similar activities that have been done in the past where people have used collaborative activities and online platforms to do some campaigning work, to try and get our minds thinking about what it's like to, how this works, why it can function, and what is required. So the first question is why crowdsource, why do it this way? And the answer is that often the information that we need to collect is very diffuse, and the knowledge is shared amongst all of us. But we all need to use all of it when we're campaigning. So I might be an expert on budget tracking and know exactly what my country is spending on sanitation, and you might be an expert on monitoring and know exactly what your country is doing on monitoring. But together, if we put this together, we can produce a clear picture for everybody, and between us we can have a united voice in how to talk about what needs to change and what needs to be improved. There's also the making things presentable. This is a table, I don't know what it says and I don't know what it means, and it would take quite a long time to read and interpret. It's not very user-friendly. But if you use some of the data visualization tools, you can make things more engaging. So this is obviously showing government spending in different sectors. So if we had similar thing, you could show where WASH is. And this you will recognize from here, simple traffic lights things, so you can see how progress is coming along. So what is WashWatch? This is a screenshot of the front page of WashWatch. The URL, if you want to find it, is www.washwatch.org, or you can use Google. And you will see that we have a map on the front page which highlights the regions that where the most need is in water and sanitation, and you're able to click on those regions, or below you, below it is just a list of countries, so you can find your country and look at it directly. What does it do? It assesses in much the same way that this has assessed the processes, the commitments the governments have made to make reforms in the country. So it doesn't assess coverage. It doesn't assess the outcomes, who's got wells where. That's someone else's job, and we don't need to repeat that. And it doesn't assess directly, at least, the financing into the ministries. What it assesses is where they have committed to make reforms, whether they are legal, institutional, political, or financial, have they followed those through? So it is looking at all of the things it assesses are commitments that are based on commitments that were made in those meetings. So there are things that these governments have signed up to and promised to do. As civil society, one of the things you can do is use it for background research. If you're doing some discussions with funders about work in your area, you can use it to give you information. You can use it for campaigning. And finally, the regional monitoring. Now, there are most of the SWA that we've just gone through have their own monitoring framework, and they want civil society to be involved. But we heard from, I think it was colleagues from Uganda talking about how you can be in the meeting with government, and then you come out and you see what gets produced, and it's not necessarily what you would have written, because you're in the meeting, but you don't necessarily hold the pen. And with WashWatch, you can hold the pen, and you can be the person who actually writes down what the reality in the situation is. As many of the commitments that were made in HLM were also were reiterating Etiquette commitments that had not already been met. So there is a lot of overlap with the existing things that WashWatch monitors, but one of the things we can think about is whether we need to ask some different questions in relation to new commitments that people have been making. But you've got SWA on the global level. We've got SACASAN in Asia. We're monitoring there. We can use Asian CSOs can use that the system to monitor SACASAN and Etiquette in Africa.